It's football and other F words. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. I'm joined by always, more than likely, always, Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL. You can follow him on Twitter there. You can follow his written work every week over at paulkarski.com. And if you're looking for even more information about Titans quarterback situations, free agency classes that I'm going to be conducting coming up. It's all going to happen at stackingtheinbox.com, $4 a month. Free agency has started officially with the transition tag. I know that means that, hey, but you can't sign free agents. This is really the offseason has started with the transition and franchise tags window opening up. You have from today, which is February 21st, all the way to March 7th for them to get all that taken care of. And tomorrow, Wednesday, when you're listening to this podcast, you are going to figure out Free Agency 101 has started. Free Agency 101 is on Wednesday, 201 on Thursday, and 301 on Friday, all at stackingtheinbox.com, all tackling various issues to make you smarter fans so you're not saying stupid shit and getting constantly wrong on Twitter. Mike, we are brought to you by, as always, Jasper's in Nashville. And I never let you do an ad read, and I did not tell you I was going to let you do the ad read today, but I'm going to let you do an ad read today.
You need to go to Jasper's and check out the great food and drinks and free parking at Jasper's. And, if you are into watching tragic horror films, go see some Preds games at Jasper's. I believe they're airing some of those, just murder
Abominations.
movies.
Abominations, right?
Yeah, it's see whatever they do at the trade deadline whenever they don't do anything and try to win with this sorry core that they've been trying to win with for like 6 years now, since the Stanley Cup run. You can go watch them flame out in spectacular fashion.
It's Horror Show on Ice. The Ice Capades
right.
over there at the Bridgestone Arena more often than not. But yes, you should go Jasper's 2-for-1 on Sundays, of course. Next Evolution, a sports bar. Mike, I think I'm going to start off with this Taylor Lewan situation because it's already being put into here. Now, I have been a big proponent that Taylor Lewan doesn't really want to accept less money and that he's going to bank on himself to go elsewhere. That's kind of what the message he has conveyed up until the Super Bowl, which I just found out this morning that he did an interview with Titans.com, TennesseeTitans.com with Jim Wyatt at the Super Bowl. I don't read every Jim Wyatt article, and maybe I should, but there's a lot at the Super Bowl that just doesn't interest me that happens on Radio Row, and that's to no fault of Jim Wyatt. That's just the state of media that week. But here is what Taylor Lewan said that you guys brought to my attention in the group chat this morning because I was unaware that this existed. Obviously, my contract is $14 million next year, Lewan said. If they come back and are like, if you want to come back, this is the number we'll bring you back at. I'm sure there will be somewhat of a conversation of, how does your knee look? Are you interested in playing? Mike and I have a fantastic relationship. Mike and I talk. We text. He makes fun of me and Will on a group chat on a consistent basis.
I do that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great relationship. So there will be a lot of transparency, and he'll tell me how he feels and what he thinks. And if he thinks that's a good thing for them, then there is absolutely a conversation to be had. If I was going to play another year, my preferred spot would be where I've been for the last 9 years. I'm a loyal guy, and it would feel very uncomfortable for me to wear a different uniform. Okay, so that is a lot to unpack, but that lets me know that he's at least open to the idea of looking at an offer, right? Isn't that what do you take away from that? Because that's what I take away is that like, oh, he knows that he's not worth $14 million. His market may have cooled off since his initial comments a few weeks ago. But what do you read into those right there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been pretty consistent this offseason, whether you go back to the K. Adam comments that he made. He expects to be released by the Titans. He knows that they are not in a position to keep him on the current contract that he's on because, I mean, look, you can save $14 million right off the rip with no dead money and just, for what they've gotten out of him the last few years, you almost have to do it given the cap situation that they're in and what he's brought to the table for them recently. And it is a what have you done for me lately kind of league. Now, I think medically, if he is right as far as the knee goes, which is a big question mark, it sounds like there was some sort of issue with the first ACL injury that may have led into the second ACL injury, which, by the way, same thing happened to Odell Beckham Jr. And, even the Rams, I think reports came out last year saying that the Rams felt like his knee was a ticking time bomb, and that it was only a matter of how many games they could get out of him before he actually tore that knee again. And it eventually ended up happening. But I feel like if you know that the knee is right and you're kind of getting a blank slate Taylor Lewan, he's a good option if you can get him to take less money. But there's no way you can bring him back full salary, and he knows that. I do think I think it's more likely that he retires than that he goes somewhere else. To me, I think he's already mentioned that he's gotten media offers, or is not maybe not offers, but he has talked to networks about doing probably some sort of studio show or maybe play by play. I don't know which route he would be interested in going there. My guess would be like studio show kind of stuff, or maybe like he did with Amazon. He did that one Amazon broadcast where he was on there. So I think he's got interest on that side of things. He's obviously got the podcast, which right now, I mean, like at this point, they're making money, pretty good money on the podcast. So, and like he mentioned,
renting out restaurants in Cabo and throwing dance parties in there and all the kinds of crazy stuff.
Well, but he mentioned in the Jim Wyatt article that he doesn't need money. Like he's not going to come back to play for $5 million, frankly, because it's probably not worth it him physically long term to do that, to put his body at risk for another year for $5 million. So I don't know what his number would be that he would have to come back, but my guess is that there is a firm number, and if he doesn't get that, he'll just retire and go be a media guy.
So we think that he's got a number in his mind, and that if the Titans and them kind of come to that number, he's willing to come in, and that requires taking a pay cut. So last night, or is it, I guess this morning, but the podcast was last night, or the video YouTube. Our favorite Titans insider that we like to talk about that has given nothing but headaches to everybody is Titans Rossi. And this is what he tweets. This just came down the pike from our insider at Tighten Up Network, which, by the way, improper marketing again by Titans Rossi by not even tagging the insider now. Like, it's gone from he's taking all of this stuff and putting it on his account to not even crediting that it was Big Sportsman 6. So Big Sportsman 6, the BSS or BSMS.
Is it Big Sportsman 6 or Big Sportsman 3?
Oh, I thought he was 6. Is he 3?
That's hard to keep up with. That's hard to keep up with. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know there were that many Big Sportsmans out there. Taylor Lewan, and this is what Big Sportsman says, just kind of like chilling in the back of his seat, just all nonchalantly. Taylor Lewan is willing to take a huge is what he says, pay cut to come back next season. Okay. So that happens, and that, of course, sparked our conversation, which led you to direct me to this article, which doesn't really say that he's willing to take a huge pay cut. It's just that I understand that if I'm going to come play, I'm going to have to take a pay cut. Yeah. So we're kind of parsing words here, right? Between huge pay cut, willing, I'll talk about it or I'll think about it. Like if it's in your head, you're kind of willing to entertain the idea, okay? So this leads to Taylor Lewan to say, quote tweet. First off, Taylor Lewan, his wife, said, believe the direct quote was, I have sources that say this never happened.
I bet her sources are pretty good.
Yeah, the bear sources are pretty good.
Close to the situation.
Yeah, Taylor quotes it and says, almost fell asleep watching this video. I can see why, but because they're tough videos to watch. They sometimes have good information, but production value needs a little work, a little entertainment value. Not everybody can be as entertaining as us. But they did a great job of saying stuff to keep the Titan fan base interested. However, I've never said what they are saying I said. Shout out to these guys, though. Just a couple of soldiers trying to do the best work they can. And then he gives them a little the salute emoji. He kind of said it though, right? I mean, like he's not saying the defining words that they're saying, but this is also kind of it's one of those situations that we talked about last week about Titans Rossi and the Titans Tighten Up Network, is that a lot of their stuff that they report as sourced is kind of duh stuff. And doesn't this seem to fall in that category? Like they read this Jim Wyatt article and maybe they took a little certain liberties to make it seem like they have a source that he said that he's willing to take a huge pay cut. Like maybe they're adding the huge, but like it just seems like the only difference between what they said and what Taylor said with Jim Wyatt is the huge part, right?
And what Taylor said on K Adams show and what Taylor said on Bussin' with the Boys, like he's mentioned it several times that he would be willing to have a conversation with them about what the number is. So yeah, I think huge is the only thing that's, being added on, and who knows what that means. Like that's very subjective as far as what huge means. Is that
Yeah.
a $2 million pay cut?
Well,
Is that a $10 million pay cut?
He said in of course, Titans Rossi did say what he meant by huge. If you define huge, 4 to 6 million, I would say, which
4 to
is
6
not.
million off of the 14 million.
I
or
would
4 to 6 million
assume
total?
because then it's hard to say because we don't.
Mhm.
There's no follow up, and this is why I write Free Agency 101 through 301. Is because there is no one knows how to fucking define anything on Twitter when it comes to salary cap.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about it looks like if I had to take it, because the guy says, is that dropping to say 4 to 5 million a year? I would say that would mean 4 to 6 million a year. Which then why wouldn't you just say your 4 to 5 is right? I mean, like, do you really need that 6 million? So that's an assumption, but it could just be that maybe they're just going to take 4 to 6 million off the contract. We don't know. But either or, don't you think that is about, regardless, 4 to 5 million is probably really what he's worth?
It's really hard to say what he's worth because like teams are desperate for left tackles, desperate. Like almost all the teams in the league to some degree need a left tackle, with the exception of like maybe like 10. There's like 10 teams that are like, hey, we're set at left tackle. Pretty much everyone else needs one or could use an upgrade or whatever. So I think there's a big market out there for him, and he's still good. Like when he's healthy, he's still good. That's the thing with Lewan that is tough because like, is he still a Pro Bowl level left tackle? I don't know, maybe. But he's good. Like he's definitely above average. He's definitely like top 10 to 12 in the league at left tackle when he's healthy. But is he going to be healthy? That's the whole question. And so, look, if you told me you could have him back for $10 million, I'd have to think long and hard about it at least because look, we know what a bad left tackle situation looks like, and it is crippling for your offense. And the Titans' offensive line, as we've mentioned a million times on here, they need so much. They need so many pieces. We don't know, like, if anybody's going to be back, basically, but except for Nicholas Petit-Frere. And so it's like, if you could guarantee me I've got a good left tackle at least until he falls apart.
At least until week 3.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. That is the other thing. If you take Lewan back, you still have to go draft a left tackle. Like you can't just say, okay, well we got Lewan, we're good.
That's the next question I have, or my next question to you is going to be: doesn't this tell you that even it doesn't matter, right? Like if Lewan's here, Lewan's here. If he's not here, it's not here. Does not change the philosophy of this team that they need a left tackle of the future. And at this point, you can't trust Lewan. It's like trusting, and we'll get into this later, but it's like trusting Bud Dupree, whether you kept him or you don't keep him. You're still going to have to draft and probably, I guess, sign another Jamarco Jones, Kendall Lamb piece of crap, or rely on Dylan Radins and let him be that bad player. Like it's a mess at left tackle, and it's because they put too much emphasis on what Taylor Lewan can be and do for the last 2 years. They have not planned. John Robinson has not planned properly for Taylor Lewan's eventual, I guess, disappearance or retirement or whatever it may be. I mean, you should have known when the podcast started and it started going off and they signed with Barstool Sports. Hey, he may not be an injured person. You can't bank on injury, but damn, I better sure plan for this guy to retire because he's making a lot of money not having to put his body on the line.
Well, that and this free agent class too is terrible for left tackle. And I know like Orlando Brown is technically out there. Orlando Brown's probably going back to the Chiefs would be my
He's
guess.
way too damn expensive, people.
And he's going to be way too expensive.
He wanted to be the highest paid in terms of guaranteed money left tackle last year, and now he's won another Super Bowl, and he'll probably be franchise tagged. And then whatever happens, he's probably happy just playing on the franchise tag because that's going to be $19.9 million.
He's not a real option here. And then a lot of people put an awful lot of faith in Andre Dillard for a guy who we've never really seen play well for any extended period of time before, and got passed up by Jordan Mailata on the depth chart in Philly. So, Andre Dillard, maybe you sign him and he's really good. Maybe, but we don't know that. We don't know that at all. There's every chance that he sucks, and that's why he hasn't been playing in Philly. So I just think this left tackle market is trash. If they could get Lewan back cheap, then great. And I don't know what cheap is. I really don't. I feel like at $8 million a year, I'd probably have to bring him back. And maybe you could get maybe
it has
he
to be very heavily incentive based, right?
Plus whatever you want to say, like a $250,000 per game active, incentive that would not count towards the cap until you would get to roll it over in next year's cap because of how those incentives work. But
which is the better way to do it because essentially, if you want Taylor Lewan back, he's going to have to be available, and he needs to be paid with the cap hit in mind that he's not available, but with his bank in mind that, hey, I will be available for you guys because I need all these per game roster bonuses. Per game roster bonuses and a small base salary is the way to go and construct his contract if you want to bring him back. We don't know what his limit is. Like you said, I would put out there like 4.2 or 4.5 base salary, which is obviously guaranteed, and then let him get $50,000 to $100,000 per game active bonus. And if y'all get the Super Bowl and he starts in the or get into the playoffs and he starts a playoff, maybe there's another kicker for him, or maybe it's a percentage of snaps played instead of per game roster bonus that kicks in. But either way, those numbers, however you do those incentives, like you said, because he only played 2 games last year, would be not likely to be earned incentives, which means that they do not count towards the cap of 2023, and they only count towards the cap of 2024 if he hits them. So it's almost like you're adding on a little bit of dead money, which next year is the time to push all your dead money to be honest with you. So
you got plenty of cap room next
year.
That
would be the thing. I think that if you're talking about a $10 million deal that includes like a roster bonus where if he's on the roster at like week 1, then give me a break. I think that's way too much. But I think there's a way you could construct it to where you come back. It's just, does he want to? And if he does come back and if he does take this cheap thing, draft a left tackle.
Yes.
I cannot stress enough how important it is for this team to draft a left tackle high in the draft. And I'm talking rounds 1 through 3. Draft a left tackle of the future in this draft. They have to. It is like the must-have item from this 2023 draft is the left tackle of the future. Do you agree? Like if you're putting in order of importance heading into the draft, that is it. Because even if they get Andre Dillard or someone that is like Jawan Taylor, I guess, is out there, or even if you sign Mike McGlinchey and do this crazy thing where you put MPF over on the left side of the line, like morons would want to do. Yeah, something like that. I mean, don't you think you still have to draft the left tackle of the future?
Yeah, I think they've got to get a left tackle in the future. Like, and to me, the first round is going to be the place to do it because I don't know. I feel like your hit rate, left tackle is one of those positions. It's left tackle, it's edge rusher, quarterback, and I think corner to some degree. But really, left tackle, edge rusher, quarterback. Those are the spots where like you have to get them in the first round because your hit rate is way higher at those spots in the first round than it is in rounds 2 through 7 plus, undrafted. So the odds of some guy being like the Jordan Mailata story, very, very rare. Like that just does not happen very often. Where you get a 6th or 7th round pick who, we turned him into this star left tackle. Like that just hardly ever happens. It happens in other positions more frequently, but not left tackle. Because there's just only so many humans on the planet with the movement skills, size, strength, everything else that is required to be an elite left tackle.
Right.
And
I
we
think
know
it was like
who those guys are.
I think like 15 of the starting 32 left tackles in the league are in the first round. 17 are from the other rounds. And these are the left tackles with the most snaps in 2022, which means that includes Dennis Daly, who was drafted in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Oof. So let's keep that in mind. You can find good left tackles in the 2nd and 3rd, but I believe that is like your extreme latest you need to go is 3rd round, especially in this draft.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you want him, Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, how do you pronounce his name?
Peter Skoronski.
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 And I'm not a big Skoronski guy.
He's not a left tackle. You just can't
so.
convince me that he's gonna be a fantastic
guard. Great guard. Yeah.
Great guard. Do not draft a guard in the first round. I just can't. Just can't do it. Not at number 11. I mean, if you want to trade down like 26, I'm fine. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Mike, you're in a bad place. And I'm sick of it. You are in Aaron Rodgers went to his dark place for a sense of calm and relaxation and to find himself clarity. You are in a worse spot with this team that I've ever seen you be in for as long as we've known each other. And for as long as we've done this podcast, you are in a horrible, horrible emotional spot. And we're going to talk it out. And I'm going to use your exact words on a lot of stuff because I've been writing them down.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Because I think people need to know. First off, I think people can find it relatable that you, of all people, are in a dark spot, which maybe you guys get in this big circle jerk down in the abyss with each other and just get in this echo chamber in your cave and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's good for people to know that you are not, because you are often accused by me as being a company man.
I know. The tides have turned.
Yeah. This is very much like the stint after the Jets, where you and Lebowski just went to this deep, dark hole. And I said, guys, it's going to get better. I swear to God, don't worry about it. And here I am again. I'm here to tell you, I'm bringing you back in the light. It's going to get better. But you went on record and said today, this team is going to suck ass. That is what you said. And this all stemmed from a conversation of all people about Bud Dupree. Okay, so let's break this down into what we've talked about these last few days, and we'll get to the quarterback market. And I thought you said you had a really good conversation starter about Caleb Williams that I want to get into, but it all started when you've been like this for a while, but it's really bad because you said the other day that there are only 2 to 3 NFL average players on offense, on the Titans offense. This 2 or 3 was Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and Ben Jones if he doesn't retire. Now, this doesn't even include Taylor Lewan. But
I'm assuming Lewan's gone. I mean,
I know. But, and I didn't include Taylor Lewan when I came back with. And then you went back, changed your words, and clarified that Chig Okonkwo and Treylon Burks are not number 1 wide receiver ones and wide receiver twos, or
I'm
or
saying
tight end ones. And
above average for the role that they're being asked to play currently on the roster.
You didn't say that initially, so I'm letting you say that now. Even though I do feel this is a very much a one of those things where you send out a tweet or send out a message or send out a tweet, then you're like, oh, this did not play well like I thought it would. And then you're kind of backtracking and declare. If you just said it right the first time.
It's not backtracking. It's clarifying. It's clarifying.
Okay, Easton. All right. I feel that is a correct way to look at it. However, I do think that there's a lot of NFL average pieces. And my initial instinct was it's Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Traylon Burks, Chig Okonkwo. Taylor Lewan comes back. I think I could put him as average. If Ben Jones retires, I could put him as average. And if NPF progresses, he could be average.
But I'm saying without a lot of projection, right?
Like,
without I'm projection. Just saying like who we know is proven right now.
And so do you, and we've talked about this on this thing, and we on this podcast, and you've said it on Twitter, this team will add pieces in the offseason. But as it sits right now, I agree. But it seems like you are very like, this team is not going, this team sucks ass. You said it. This team sucks ass, is not going anywhere on offense. They're not going to do enough on offense
the roster is in terrible shape.
Isn't it worse shape than last year?
It's in worse shape than last year right now, yes.
But will it be, do you think in your heart of hearts, will it be worse than last year?
I mean, I think it could be. I don't know. I mean, because look,
you were supposed to be back in the light when Rand Carthon got hired. I don't know what happened to you. Come back.
I'm excited about Rand Carthon and his potential to rebuild this franchise in the way that he wants to build it. My issue is that I think they are very likely going to take a step back before they take a step forward. And that's not Rand Carthon's fault. It is because J-Rob left this roster in a flaming dumpster fire. It is bad. Like, if you look at, let's go through the list. Like, quarterback, Tannehill, okay, if they keep him, but we don't even know if they're going to do that. We'll see. Running back, Derrick Henry's great, but he's 30 years old. He's on the downslope of his career, certainly. Who knows how many, productive seasons he's going to have left. Wide receiver, you got maybe one guy that you're excited about in Traylon Burks, and that is if he can stay healthy, if he comes in shape this year, if he develops the way that they're hoping he will. Chig Okonkwo is kind of the same boat with it, maybe a few less ifs. I feel pretty good about Chig, although he's a relatively limited player. Like he needs to be like.
You are putting limitations on him. I think
he's a specific type of player. Like he is not a Gronk or a George Kittle or like one of those types of tight ends that can be on the field every single play and can be like that guy. Like maybe he turns into that guy eventually, but he's not there right now. And then the offensive line is nobody. There's nobody there that you're happy about, assuming that Ben Jones and Taylor Lewan aren't back. So I just don't know. Like, they're $20 million over the salary cap right now. I know they can save space. They'll create some room. There's all that.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Well, if you know that they're going to not be at $20 million over the cap.
It's worth saying. Here's the reason. Because if you look at the other teams that are in the league, they can create salary cap space too, but they have more of it right now than the Titans do. All but like 3 or 4
not
teams.
Your franchise of the year, Jacksonville Jaguars. You love talking about them and
players. So they at least
they're going to have to lose some of their good players.
Well, they're gonna be in better shape than the Titans roster is heading into the offseason.
When they have to go up against better teams.
That's fine. But I just think the Titans, if you compare them to the rest of the league in just about every category, like cap space available, who they have on their current roster, they're in a really bad place right now. They are like in, Vegas odds are what they are, but like there's a reason the Titans are like 5th or 6th from the bottom as far as like Super Bowl odds right now, because they deserve to be there. They are not anywhere close to a Super Bowl team right now. They aren't even, to me, they're not even a playoff team right now. Like this is not a playoff team. They have a long way to go to get to playoff.
This team was just a playoff team like 3 weeks ago with Josh Dobbs as its quarterback. They were in playoff contention.
they were coasting off of a 7-3 start that had was way, way, way in the rearview mirror,
They
and
were
the fact
still
that the division was
tight
terrible.
games though. So I look at it this way. With I think that last year's roster was pretty piss poor. That you didn't really get anything from any of your free agents. It was a pretty bad draft class. I mean, I don't want to say bad because there was a lot of hope in the draft class, but the draft class started out really hot and then they didn't live up to expectations. Then you still got the issues of 2020 to 2021 just coming back to haunt you in every which way. They trade off AJ Brown, and this team, listen, I told you week 2 that this team is not going to make the playoffs, right? I mean, I've been pounding this table while you said, "Oh no, this is a good team. They beat the Raiders, and the Raiders are going to be at the end of the year going to be better than what everybody thinks they are." Wrong. I told you that this team is not a good playoff team. And now I'm here to tell you, Mike, I'm going 3 for 3. I told you all after the Jets game. I told you all after the Giants game. I'm going to tell you now, this team will be better than last year because of a bunch of different reasons. I think the roster will be better. I mean, I cannot fathom an offensive line worse than Dennis Daly, Aaron Brewer on the left side. If those two are such easy upgrades.
They'll be better on the left side, but are they going to be any better on the right side? Or if Ben Jones isn't back, they're going to be worse at center. If Nate Davis isn't back, they're going to be worse at right guard.
That depends on what they do. Obviously, I think the chances Nate Davis wasn't
options.
That great. I mean, you're not going to be able to fix it in. You're not going to be able to fix it solely in free agency, right? I'm taking into account that I think that there's ways of free agency and ways in the draft that you can mix and match your offensive line.
You're going to have to, because you just don't have that many resources available.
Right.
I mean,
right.
And that's my biggest point, I guess, is there are so many holes to plug. They need 4 starters on the offensive line. They need a wide receiver for sure that is an instant starter.
And I think they
probably
need
a second wide receiver that can be in the top 4 mix. They need a tight end that can be an instant starter. That's 7.
They need a tight end that can block, right? I mean, it's not like an instant starter.
But the guy that can block is the guy that's going to be on the field on first and second downs. I mean, he's going to be a big part of the offense. Jeff Swaim played a huge role in this offense against everyone's wishes.
But you just need someone better than Jeff Swaim.
Yeah, you need someone better than Jeff Swaim. But they also had Austin Hooper, which are you going to bring back Austin Hooper because he's going to cost money? And he was valuable to them. He did provide some value for them. So they have so many holes to plug. And there is only so many resources to go around. They can just throw all the money into 2024 if they want, and still only create probably $30 to $40 million of cap space, which it goes a long way. It does. You can plug some holes with that kind of money, but there's just so many holes. And then you flip over to the defense, and we were talking about with the whole Bud Dupree thing.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe. Listen. I sent a text message to Greenlaw and Graver, and I said, let me get the exact wording real quick. I said to them, Mike is completely off his rocker. This is about the Bud Dupree thing, and I've just never seen you so depressed over the state of the franchise, but also the possibility of losing a guy who we both kind of admit that is not that good.
I'm not upset about the idea of losing Bud Dupree. I think my point was not that they absolutely have to keep Bud Dupree. It was that I'm not sure it's that much of a done deal or a for sure thing that they're going to release him, because if you don't have Bud Dupree, now you have Harold Landry coming off of an ACL. We've seen what that looks like for guys like this, and it's not always good. And then you have 33-year-old Danico Autry, who's really kind of playing out of position on the edge anyways. And Rashad Weaver, who had 4 sacks in the first, 3 games, and then 1.5 the rest of the year. And look, I know you can go get get like Edwards back and go get DeMarcus Walker back. These are all Jags. Like DeMarcus Walker's better than a Jag. DeMarcus Walker is a pretty good player, but you're gonna have to pay him now. Like you paid him almost nothing last year. You have to pay
him like
him
$4 or $5 million.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, that's $4 or $5 million you can't spend somewhere else, and you've got all these holes on offense. So I think there's so many question marks because if this pass rush isn't good, you've got more problems because that was the only thing that you could rely on for like a big chunk of the season. And I get that Dupree like wasn't necessarily Dupree's contract is fucking awful. Like, let's get that out of the way. It is awful. It was bad the day he signed it because he was coming off of an ACL and they still gave him money like he was completely healthy. And they paid him more than I think the Ravens the Patriots paid for Judon, who's been amazing for them. But Dupree's contract is terrible, but it's not like he's a negative when he's on the field. And I get it. Like he has to be on the field more. And that's the problem.
There's been some times when he is on the field that he's a neutral. He's not a positive or he's not a negative. He's at worst a neutral player on the field.
He's not a huge impact player in my opinion. Like and I've said this the whole time about Bud Dupree. He is not your traditional like elite edge rusher. Like he does not win at a super high rate off the edge. Like what he does do, and we've talked about this when we've both been higher on Bud Dupree, was that he helps the pass rush because he helps crush the pocket. And he's really good at getting a push and at least moving the line of scrimmage, even if he's not winning and getting free himself. So like he helps influence the pass rush as a whole. And I still think that's true. Now, how valuable that is, whether that's more or less valuable than the $9.5 million you would save by cutting him, I don't know. I think there's probably a very strong argument that it's not worth more. But yeah, you could restructure him.
Which saves you, I think, restructures. I know there's a restructure and extension are one's 10 million, one's 11 million, up to. Like you get a guaranteed 9 million with, the way that if you just cut him.
And part of the reason I think that might be on the table is that part of his salary this year is guaranteed. So like
that like kind of $3 or $1 million to $3 million.
I think it was like $3 or $4 million of his salary this year is guaranteed. So if you wanted to keep him, you could and restructure
1.25
without changing really the amount of like dead cap hit you're going to end up like hitting that much. So I don't know. I just think it's not necessarily a slam dunk, but like, look, if you cut him, you get the $9.5 million. You can use that to sign a new edge rusher. And I think there's some guys that, could be interesting, like Arden Key, like Ogbania, Okoronkwo, who was the other one? Samson Ebukam from the Niners. There's some guys out there that like I find are interesting as free agency investments, but there's not like I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot better than Bud Dupree. And now maybe you're like, well, we can pay that guy $5 or $6 million and then spread the other, $2 or $3 million in savings to some other guy that you have to sign. But there's just so many holes. Like you look at like David Long has to be re-signed or replaced because you don't have a replacement for him on the roster. Are you happy with the corners if everybody's healthy? Maybe. Can you count on everyone to be healthy? No.
In my opinion, you have to solve it on the draft. That's not one I would attack in free agency, the cornerback position.
That's still just such a young corner room. And it was young last year too, which I don't know if they care or not, but I just feel like Christian Fulton being the veteran of that group is a bit of a problem in its own right. So I don't know. I guess getting back to my overall point about like the state of the roster and the state of the team,
it's gonna suck ass.
There's so many holes. There's so many holes on this roster, and I think Mike Vrabel's a hell of a coach. I think this coaching staff is actually pretty good. Like regardless of what I feel about Tim Kelly as the offensive coordinator and whether they should have gone and gotten somebody else or could have gone and gotten somebody else or whatever, I think there's a pretty good coaching staff top to bottom.
Don't you think that mitigates a lot of it, though? Because that's my other point is that Mike Vrabel, it doesn't have to be 2 or 3 levels better. It just needs to be for the Tennessee Titans to show improvement from last year to this year. It just has to be better than Jeff Swain. Like, it just has to be better than Dennis Daly. And I know that is like oversimplifying the situation and really lowering the bar of what it takes to be successful. But it's because I feel like Mike Vrabel and this coaching staff outside of Tim Kelly has a track record to be able to elevate talent above it. I'm not going to include Tim Kelly in that because I got to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
I will not change my stance on that. Just because I think the coaching staff as a whole is good doesn't mean that Mike Vrabel wasn't insular in his process, and doesn't mean that Tim Kelly's all of a sudden good hire. I just think the sum of the parts is better than this. Whatever. I always mess that up. But either way, I think the staff as a whole is much better than last year, and I think that can improve. That can carry a lot of weight. If Keith Carter truly was a problem in developing the offensive line, and he was the reason why the offensive line was screwed up as well as John Robinson, then he's gone. Okay, then you get Coach Haas. He's there to essentially let everybody know that, hey, I know what not to do. I can take it from here. And then you got Anthony Midget out of there because he just couldn't teach technique, and these guys could not take what he was coaching and putting it on the field. Now you have one of the best teachers for defensive backs, Chris Harris, there. It feels like the coach can make up a lot of ground for the talent. We've seen Mike Vrabel be able to do that, and now you don't have Todd Downing. Like, isn't that just change everything for this team? And for me, that just changes everything for this team. There's like a weight lifted off the shoulder. There's no Todd Downing. It's Mike Vrabel. It's this massive, sprawling offensive coaching staff that he's assembled, and now Chris Harris makes up for a lot of the problems of last year. You still got to attack it, but I feel like there is a way to build this offensive line to where it's not the 32nd worst pass blocking offensive line. If it just is like the defense, if it just gets to like 21, that's good enough for this team for next year to compete.
When
I say compete, I mean be a playoff caliber team, which doesn't take much when you're in the AFC South. Okay,
I don't think 21st is good enough. I really don't. I don't think the 21st ranked offense in the NFL is good enough to compete.
It would have been good enough last year.
I mean, maybe so.
You probably don't have Lewan get injured. You don't have Dennis Daly out there. I mean, you buy your guys some time. They were in so many games that were so close, though. With a worse, theoretically, it should be a better roster. Now, I know that has to go into action. I know I'm projecting a lot, but I feel like it just has to be just slightly better.
And we're also comparing the theoretical new roster to the injured Titans roster of last year, which there are going to be injuries next year. Like, now, there may not be like the injury Armageddon that we've seen the last 2 years. Like, God, I hope not. Surely they have figured out, like, or just luck will break the other way and people won't tear their knees or whatever. But there are going to be injuries, and there are going to be injuries probably to some key players. So who that is, how long that is, all that stuff, like, it's easy to say, all right, well, they just got to be better than Dennis Daly and, whoever, Jordan Roos or whatever. But those guys were depth and they played, and there will be depth players playing. And so not only did they have to get the starters better, they have to get the depth better too. Like, the depth is not there at any position on this entire roster. There is not depth at any position that you feel good about. Like, not a single one. And that is a major, major problem. And I don't think that can be fixed in one off season. So if they are going to compete next year, I think it is going to have to be because they upgrade at some key spots significantly. They hit on most of their signings and draft picks. And then they get lucky that the injuries don't fall in spots where they don't have depth, because they are not going to have depth on this team next year. They just aren't. Like, this roster is bad. It is a bad roster. And it got bad fast. I feel like just 2 years ago, we were talking about, look, this is one of the most complete rosters in the NFL. They had Julio Jones and AJ Brown and this offensive line that was good and all this stuff. And it's all gone. It's all gone 2 years later. It's all gone. And it kind of feels like we're a blank slate at this point, from a offensive standpoint for sure, even from a defensive standpoint at certain spots. But that is kind of one of the things, though, that does make me interested in this offseason is that, we're going to know what Rand Carthon values and how he looks at this thing because.
But it doesn't matter because this team's going to suck ass.
Well,
this team is going to suck ass.
I think they're going to be bad this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they'll be below 500 this year. But I think this is a 2 year.
So silly. I cannot wait for this one to be wrong.
We'll see. I've been wrong before. I may be wrong again. I hope I'm wrong. That'd be good. I'd hate to have to watch another shitty Titans team because Lord knows I've watched enough of them in my lifetime. But I look at the roster and I'm like, what's there to be excited about? I don't see it. What's the strength of this team?
Okay. I mean, if you're asking me what the strength of this team is, it's the coaching staff. And I think that's enough. I think the coaching staff and the defensive line are some of the bigger ones. And I think the quarterback situation, that's really what I kind of want to dive into is the quarterback market is right now. This quarterback market is really taking a turn to where it benefits the Tennessee Titans. And I know nobody wants to hear it, but you got Daniel Jones wanting north of $45 million a year. Lamar Jackson wanting $208 million plus, fully guaranteed in his contract. Kyler Murray's getting overpaid and has hamstrung the Arizona Cardinals. You just look at it and people think that Geno Smith's going to get north of $30 million a year. People think that Jimmy G's going to get the same and that Derek Carr is going to get $50 million guaranteed and probably way above that. This is an insane quarterback market. So I know we have shat on John Robinson's job for these last few years. And I know that Ryan Tannehill has amounted to nothing as far as it did not get you a Super Bowl. But that contract was a pretty damn good contract, even with the Julio Jones restructuring. Because if you're looking at it right now, first off, if I'm any team, I am wanting Ryan Tannehill's contract instead of any of the guys that I just named. And if I'm the Titans, I'm feeling pretty good about, okay, well, even if we extend him, that's still going to be better than what everybody else is paying. And it doesn't prevent you from getting a young quarterback.
Yeah, and look, if they didn't win a Super Bowl is the metric by which we judge quarterbacks. Josh Allen's been a failure. Joe Burrow's been a failure. All these guys are failures besides Patrick Mahomes and a few others. Look, Tannehill is what he is. I don't think he's the guy that puts you over the top. I don't think he's the guy that carries the roster. But yeah, I think he's better than a lot of these quarterbacks. I think he's still a pretty good quarterback. And the value and we've been saying this since the day they signed that deal. It's a great value deal. I think at the time, the day he signed it,
it told everybody
the 9th or 10th biggest AAV.
And we told everybody it would just keep going down.
And it would keep falling. And I think now it's somewhere around 16th among quarterbacks. And look, he's better than the 16th best quarterback in the NFL. Now I don't think he's top 10 necessarily, but he's better than most of these.
It's appropriate quarterback value to contract.
Yes,
and spare me this $36 million cap hit. That's because of Julio Jones. It's not Ryan Tannehill's fault. It's John Robinson's fault for going after Julio Jones.
Drives me insane when people bring that up because it's he only had a cap hit of $9 million in 2020. Was it 2021? So if we want to look at it that way, then he was wildly underpaid that year. But it's that's the most ridiculous argument. But I do think the quarterback market plays to their favor because look, Tannehill's contract is a value. The team trading for him would only be on the hook for $27 million, non-guaranteed. and they could restructure that if they wanted to. They could extend that. They could like lower that cap hit. I mean, you could really do some things with
And
Tannehill's
the Titans
contract.
could too, and not
Yeah,
be in a position where they're stuck with him for like 6 years. Like it, I would love for
yeah,
them to trade
could
him.
be.
I want to say very clear. I would love for the Titans to trade him and get a lot of value, because not only do I think that's what's best for the team, is just get away from Ryan Tannehill and cut loose, but you get draft picks back, and like we said last week, we get proven right. So it just is like good stuff on top of good stuff. It's like a good news Sunday if that Ryan Tannehill gets traded tweet hits. And I will say this. I don't know where I stand on whether they're going to do it or not. I know there's a lot of people with conviction that Ryan Tannehill, for sure, no matter what, is going to be the quarterback in 2023 for the Tennessee Titans. And I was one of those guys. But there is an opportunity here for a lot of teams, and teams we haven't even ever talked about. The Commanders. And I know that they say, oh, Sam Howell's our quarterback. Hey, guess what? Bruce Arians said the same thing at the Combine about Jameis Winston. They weren't interested in Tom Brady, and look what happened. And then there's the Panthers. Frank Reich and Mike Vrabel, they have a good off-the-field relationship as well from the time they've hung out. You're trying to tell me that Ryan Tannehill's not the kind of guy that the Panthers could attach and put over there and avoid having to spend a high draft pick on a quarterback, instead build around it?
The Panthers would immediately be the favorites to win that division. Somebody in that division is going to be able to win the division easily if they traded for Ryan Tannehill or
Yep.
or got Derek Carr.
The Buccaneers are another team that could trade for him. I mean, even those are just the NFC teams. The Seahawks could do it too. If you don't hit negotiations with Geno Smith where you want him, isn't it a lot better just to trade for Ryan Tannehill? And that is way cheaper than what Geno Smith is probably asking for. Like those are just the NFC teams. And then there's the AFC teams, but those NFC teams don't get talked about it enough. Panthers, Tampa Bay, the Commanders, the Seahawks. I'm sure I may be even missing a few, but those teams don't get talked enough about in this sweepstakes. It's just, it's the Jets, or it's, maybe it's the Raiders, but if it's not the Jets, nobody's going to take them.
The Jets are the only ones who have publicly come out and basically said, we're going to trade for, or we're going to go get a veteran quarterback this offseason. So I think that's why they get a lot of in their New York and all that. But, there's a ton of landing spots. And look, I think if the Titans are being honest with themselves and saying, what is the direction that the franchise is going? Because like I've said all along, I don't think this is going to be a good team in 2023. I think if you bring everybody back and you hit on a bunch of stuff, maybe you could compete for the division, but you're not going to the Super Bowl next year with this team the way it is. It would be the miracle of miracles for this team to get to the Super Bowl, given the state of the current roster, the assets they have available, and I mean, Rand Carthon should win the next 10 GMs of the year awards if they won the Super Bowl in his first year somehow. So if they're being honest with themselves, isn't the best thing that they could do if Tannehill does have a market? Because he'll be a free
I swear to
agent
God, if you bring up Teddy Bridgewater, I'm cutting this feed off. I swear to God.
And let me defend myself, because I heard you on a football show saying that I'm obsessed with Teddy Bridgewater.
You are
I'm
so
not
obsessed with Teddy Bridgewater. You bring him up all the fucking time.
The only reason I use his name is because, one, when I think of bridge quarterback, how can I not think of Bridgewater? Like it just pops it into my brain immediately. But
I don't know if you've gone to stackingtheinbox.com, but I called out and I said, do you know what all has happened in our lives since 2015? The last time that Teddy Bridgewater started a full 16 games.
A lot
has happened. I said, I've moved twice. I got a dog, and I got married, and I've started businesses.
I've started business.
Yeah, so that's how long ago the Teddy Bridgewater should never be on anybody's mind.
I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is like the guy that I would want. I just use him as an example, like a placeholder of like, you can get a guy like Jacoby Brissett, or like, I think Baker Mayfield is kind of, would be gross.
Come on.
He would be gross, but like,
he's not good for the culture or anything, though.
Well, I know. That's why I don't bring up
You might as well.
for
I'd
or,
rather you bring up Sam Darnold than Baker
well,
Mayfield.
yeah,
That's a
Darnold would be another one. Darnold would be a guy I feel like you could go get, plug him in like he's better than Malik Willis. Like you're
Can I
not
say
gonna.
something though about Sam Darnold? You know the Tennessee Titans would win the division with Sam Darnold as their quarterback.
No,
Mike Vrabel could do it.
not.
I'm telling you right now. I just can't bet against Mike Vrabel.
I like Mike Vrabel too. I just don't think he's a miracle worker, which is what I think it would take to win the division with
He
this
couldn't do
roster
it
and
with
the way it
Zach
is.
Wilson, but I think he could do it with Sam Darnold, former Jets
Oh yeah,
quarterbacks.
nobody's doing anything with Zach Wilson. But like I think if you traded Tannehill and you could get a couple picks for him, or even just a third, like if you could trade him for a third, like
We
that's
need 2
great.
picks minimum for us to be right, though. So
You
let's
get.
put it there.
I mean, you get rid of the contract, you get some an additional draft pick, and you set yourself up to not only kind of reset your cap and get a few more pieces on board, but you also set yourself up to be bad and be a part of the Caleb Williams and Drake May and Quinn Ewers, sweepstakes. Whoever becomes QB1, I think it'll be Caleb Williams, but you set yourself up to be in a position to draft a quarterback next year. So I don't know. I think it would be a good situation for them if they wanted to, or hell, if they wanted to, go get their guy this year and try it. I mean, you could. So there's nothing saying you couldn't take a quarterback this year and then pull a Cardinals and take a quarterback next year if you suck and you figure out you hate him.
Yeah, well, that though typically requires a change in coach. So let's talk about this Caleb Williams, because you said that there's like I guess Wes brought it up, that trading up for a first or trading up or something about Caleb Williams. I don't know what it was. Either way,
Yeah.
You had said that there's like so many teams are going to want Caleb Williams, it's going to be almost impossible to trade up in the
really
sense talking about tanking. And you look at it, and there's about 16 teams with, I would say, less than settled quarterback situations. 3 or 4 of those teams are going to settle their quarterback situation in the draft, right? Because more than likely they are newer head coaches or brand new head coaches and probably are not going to get fired.
Yeah. At least 2, probably 3 or 4.
Yeah. So then you have the free agency people, the people that are going to sign Carr and Jimmy G, maybe not Jimmy G, let's say Derek Carr. They're going to invest in, Lamar Jackson, invest in Daniel Jones. That takes some pieces away. Depending on how these contracts roll and all that, you've invested resources. So really, you're talking about let's say 3 teams off there. So that 16 goes down to 10. And then you got the free agent market next year, which is going to take some, maybe like 2 away. So now you're down to 8 teams that probably are viably there for Caleb Williams, Drake May, and whoever else may come out next year.
But theoretically, if you're taking free agents from next year and moving them from one team to another, then you're opening up a couple more.
Well, depends. Well, like what if the Titans drafted a quarterback but kept Ryan Tannehill? You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean,
that's why
possible,
that's why I kept the number low to like 2. Like I didn't, go crazy or anything. So let's say 8 to 10 teams are going to be wanting or vying for Caleb Williams. So I ask you, not because we're not going to talk about retooling versus rebuild, because this team mindset is retooling. Wasting your time on a rebuild and tanking and all this kind of stuff is just, you're wasting emotional energy you don't need to waste.
Yeah, I don't think they would tank.
Yeah. So is it better in your head? Because this is from the 33rd team, who I thought, and they, when they do their mock drafts, they have like 3, a former scout, a former GM, and a former coach, I think, get together and they do their mock drafts this way. And they talk. Here is a trade scenario that I thought was really good. And I'm not a big fan of the quarterback that they took, but I thought that the value was there, that this trade makes sense. You trade up with Detroit, who is at the number 6 spot, and you trade them your first round pick this year and your second round pick this year, and you get CJ Stroud.
I'd be in on that, yeah.
Yeah, don't you think that's according to PFF mock draft machine, which isn't that great. And I have not gone and checked like the Spielberger numbers and all that kind of crap, the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. But you could almost possibly get it like a third or a fourth back too. You could, maybe get a fourth back in the trade as well. Trade 2 picks for 2 picks. Don't you think that is a good value, and that kind of helps the team too?
I mean, I'd be in on that. Yeah, I'd be in on trading up. I don't think they can realistically get to one because I just feel like the package is going to be too much to give up for one of these quarterbacks. But
You
I
have
would
to trade
be.
Tannehill to get to that spot. Like, if you want the number 1 overall pick, you have to trade Tannehill, then use picks to get up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good situation to be in if they're. I mean, look, if they love C.J. Stroud, like say the Texans want Bryce Young and the Colts want Will Levis, which I think is, I mean, a viable possibility, then maybe Stroud is the third guy sitting there on the board, and I'd be all about C.J. Stroud as a potential quarterback for the future here. I'd be all in on that. So, yeah, if there's somebody that is non-Will Levis sitting there
Yes.
among those
Never
top 3
Levis.
quarterbacks, and I mean, like, I guess I would hesitate about trading up for Anthony Richardson just because I think the bust potential is too high with him to really like be worth trading up for. But if he was there at 11, I might consider it because I do think his ceiling is probably higher than anybody else in the draft class from a quarterback standpoint. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways they could go in the draft that I think are really interesting quarterback wise. Because I mean, look, I feel like this is the truth though, and I'm interested to get your take on this because
Okay.
if this is the way Rand Carthon views it, then it's kind of going to set the path moving forward. They have to find their next quarterback in the next 2 years, right? Like either 2023 or 2024, they have to find their next quarterback, assuming there's not a Malik Willis miracle happening, which I think none of us are expecting at this point.
He showed promise. Oh, let me say something about this because I did the Mike Herndon show after the Kansas City game.
Yes.
And Easton said that you sung praises. Maybe I shouldn't put that much emphasis on what he said, but he said that you thought he showed promise and improvement in the Kansas City game. When we talked on that show, you shat on Malik Willis the whole time. And I was trying to, because I was trying to make sure, I was trying to keep it positive. So I just want to say that you have, since that Kansas City game, you have never been a fan of Malik Willis. You want him to succeed, but you don't think it's ever going to happen, right? I mean, like,
it's a long way.
It's a long way. And
like,
that's I tried to hold on as long as I could. I said a lot of positive things in that show about Malik Willis. I said a lot of things positive about Malik Willis after his second start. But then when I saw Josh Dobbs, I came out and said, it ain't happening. Like,
that was pretty damning. The Dobbs experience was pretty damning from Malik.
I hope to God it would be fantastic news. What were you saying was a miracle earlier in the show? Oh, if they won the Super Bowl, if the Titans won the Super Bowl, it would be a miracle. It'd be the most miracle of all miracles, I believe is what you said. Yeah. The second most miracle of all miracles of Malik Willis suddenly turns into the guy. like that is, I want him to.
Not just the guy, but an elite guy.
Yeah, I hope that I win the lottery. I hope every time I play the lottery. It's very improbable. The chances are astronomical that I'm going to win the lottery. The chances of Malik Willis being anything other than a backup is astronomical. But hell, I'm going to root for it. However, because I root for it does not mean that the Tennessee Titans should ignore the quarterback position. And I agree with you. The Tennessee Titans have to find their quarterback of the future some way, somehow, this year or next year. And it cannot rely on Malik Willis being that guy.
And you and I are staunchly anti-Levis.
Yes.
I don't know where you're at exactly on Anthony Richardson. I feel like I'm higher on him.
I like Anthony Richardson a lot because I've seen Kevin Johnson, who I thought left Twitter, then came back to Twitter, then I thought he left again. High Pockets 84 or whatever he is. He's a Florida fan, and he says, I've watched enough Anthony Richardson. I know as a Florida fan that he's not going to be a good quarterback. So that lets me know that Anthony Richardson is going to be a good quarterback because I've never seen anybody be wrong and terrible about quarterbacks as much as High Pockets because he's a Mariota stan. Just never forget.
That's true. But so let's say there's 3 if you believe the other draft experts, 4 first-round talent quarterbacks in this class. And I don't think any of the guys outside of 4. I know Tennessee fans have a hard-on for Hendon Hooker.
I like Hendon Hooker from he's probably a Dak Prescott ceiling kind of guy.
I can see him being Dak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could
Like,
see that.
not elite,
No.
never elite, but he could be a guy just based on sheer leadership and willpower that could do a lot for your team. And I kind of feel like Tanner McKee's kind of like Derek Carr, like Ryan Tannehill asked, like, again, not elite, but they probably got the tools. They're big bodied, quarterbacks, but they're not guys I want to bank my future on.
Right. Yeah. Their ceiling is guy that you have that you can be competitive with, but you're still looking for another quarterback. So 4 guys this year, max. Next year, we know May is going to be in the conversation. Williams is going to be in the conversation. I think Ewers has a chance to get in the conversation just because of his talent.
Michael Penix?
Yeah, I can see Michael Penix. And
which I think he needs to add a pho. Like, let's add a pho in there because that's too close to penis, right? I mean, like, let's just change your name to Michael Phoenix and make everything easier for everybody.
And that
is going to happen. I guarantee.
And there's some Bo Nix love out there. I'm not sure I'm buying that one. But I think there's 3 next year that are, maybe 4. We'll say maybe 4 that are like potentially the guy, like an elite ceiling type of quarterback. So you have to find a way to get one of those 8 guys, right?
Like, right. Like, because like people are like hyping up Shadir Sanders, and then Jaden Daniels is like apparently the top 5, and spare me with that. I'm just going down this list. You can't believe in Sam. I can't even say his last name. Hurd from Washington. I mean, I don't. It's not a great quarterback class, and this is what I've been telling people is that the quarterback class in the quarterback situation is going to be very cyclical in the draft. These are not going to be. It's going to be a little bit for the quarterback class to come back to where there's like 5 or 6 guys. That's why I'm all for, if you identify one of these guys, trade up to get them. But you're gonna have to find. Listen, even if that means going the crazy ass route of trading for Lamar Jackson, find a franchise guy. Because let me say something about San Francisco and Rand Carthon is that just because they have Trey Lance didn't mean that they weren't going to spend a draft pick on a quarterback, and they weren't going to spend money on a quarterback to back them up. And that's how the Titans are going to have to treat Malik Willis. Just because they have Malik Willis and spend a 3rd-round pick on him, which is not as much as a 1st-round pick, they still got to attack and address the quarterback position until they get it right. And Malik Willis has shown you no signs, legit no signs. And what I mean by that, he has shown you no signs because he's not a consistent quarterback, and consistency reigns supreme. So I want to go back to CJ Stroud just real quick because I think that CJ Stroud is probably the best anticipatory thrower of the football and probably arguably the most accurate maybe as well. I think I still would lean Bryce Young, but Bryce Young is much
accurate
more
for Stroud.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like Steph Curry versus prime Dwayne Wade, right? Like
I think Bryce Young's a better playmaker.
You think Young's the better playmaker?
I think Stroud's a better.
Yeah. Sorry,
more accurate.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. I got them flipped in my head for a second. But if that's the case, and anticipatory throw and accuracy are 2 of the big things that Rand Carthon said on the Greenlight Pod, CJ Stroud is probably the guy that fits that mold. And, I'm not a big Ohio State quarterback. I know that's helmet scouting, but I got to see it to believe it. But if they have that strong a conviction, then I will at least keep an open mind and blank slate about CJ Stroud and be excited that they have identified the quarterback of the future sooner rather than later.
I think Stroud may be the guy that I'm most excited about out of this draft class as far as quarterbacks go, because I feel like he's got everything you want in a quarterback. The one thing that he didn't have, the biggest knock on him was, playmaking outside of structure and that kind of thing. And I feel like he answered that in that Georgia game to a large degree, which that's just one game. But that's a pretty damn big game and impressive platform to do that in. So, and again, like, guy's still just 21 years old and only has 2 seasons of college football under his belt, as a starter anyway. So it is, I think it's Young and Stroud are 1 and 2 very clearly still. I still feel that. But I would be all in on Stroud. Like, I very much like him as a prospect. And I feel like the Vrabel, Ohio State connection thing is probably a little bit overblown. But if you remember back, like, what Vrabel has raved about quarterbacks before is the same thing that Carthon said about anticipation and accuracy. Vrabel was obsessed with Phillip Rivers back when Rivers was in the division and they had to play him, because he would just rave about Rivers. Oh man, he throws it with so much anticipation and he's just, can drop it in the bucket from, any spot on the field, all that stuff. I feel like that is what they value. I feel like they are very much going to be in sync on that. And I think CJ Stroud checks a lot of those boxes. I know that there's been those reports out there that, like, from the NFL Rums accounts that we always beg you guys not to pay attention to. And I still believe you should not be paying attention to those reports, but they do make sense that the Titans would be attracted to CJ Stroud from everything we've heard Rand Carthon say, from everything we've heard Mike Vrabel say, and from what Stroud brings to the table. So, like, I am in on CJ Stroud.
And for what it's worth,
available.
his PFF comp is Ryan Tannehill, which
that
probably
one's weird to me.
That is so weird. I guess it's because of his athleticism and his ability to be accurate, I guess. I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah.
But like, if you take, here's how you should view it. CJ Stroud is what people are so desperate for Justin Fields to be, are so desperate for Lamar Jackson to be as a passer. Now, he's not. I think that there is a lot of explosiveness to his game, and I think as far as on the ground, he can make plays. I went and rewatched the Georgia game actually today, and I was like, okay, there's some really good throws, but I really need to go watch the other film. And I know that's the film that everybody's basing it off of. Is like, I think even No Flags Film said on a podcast, can't remember which, or maybe it was his video, I don't know, or maybe it was in his group chat. But he basically said that he's never let one game influence his evaluation more than the Georgia game. But
it's hard not to.
It's a fucking awesome game. And I also watched Will Levis's both of his Georgia games, and I could not, for the life of you, tell you what anybody sees of Will Levis. He's big and he's white. I swear to God, that is the only thing that people like about him, is that he's tall and he's white, because he's never ranked in the top half or the top like 10% of quarterbacks in deep yards. And everybody's like, oh, he's got a big arm. Well, he sure never hell fucking used it. I mean, he was like, It's awful. He has hardly any deep yards. He's never gone 3,000 yards in a season. He has double-digit interceptions over the last 2 years. He's played in 24 games, 12 of them in college football. Half of his games, 50%, less than 200 passing yards. I do not see it. I am sorry. I just refuse to believe that he's going to be a viable quarterback. Whoever drafts that guy, which is, I'm hoping it's the Colts. We talked about it last week about Shane Steichen and going to be out in 2 years with Chris Ballard. There's your sign right there. Those guys are sunk if they draft Will Levis.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I've been out on Levis the whole time, especially as like when people were pushing, mainly Mel Kiper pushing the crazy narrative of him being the first overall pick, which has been insane from the jump. And if a team trades up to number 1 and takes Will Levis, I will laugh at them forever. And I just like, I hope that happens. Honestly, I would absolutely love it. But
my big bold prediction will remain: Will Levis does not go in the first round.
I think he will. I think he will, because some team's going to be like, "Oh my God, he's 6'5" and he looks like Ben Roethlisberger." But yeah, it's I don't know. I just don't see it with him. But I see it with Stroud. I see what people like with Bryce Young. Obviously, like I think there's a lot to like about those two guys, and I think they've shown it. consistently over the last 2 years. It has been like you talked about consistency. They've been very consistent. And I think, like you said, with Tannehill, the comp from Tannehill to Stroud, I get it from an accuracy standpoint and even from an athleticism standpoint. I think they're kind of like similar-ish athletes, which is a good thing. I mean, Tannehill's a really good athlete. I think Stroud's a little bit bigger as far as his build than Tannehill is. And I also think Stroud's a better decision maker. Now, he doesn't have to make as difficult decisions as Tannehill does in the NFL, but I think he's a better decision maker overall and takes better care of the football than Tannehill does generally. So I think the Stroud is better than Tannehill, and I don't think there's this like ceiling on Stroud that like, oh, he can't ever be more than that Tannehill, Carr, Cousins, Dak, mid class NFL quarterback. I think he's got an elite ceiling, and I think Bryce Young does too. I just
let me ask you
the size does bother me with Bryce Young. I'm not gonna lie.
That's what I want to ask. Okay, what is the minimum weight and height that he needs to come in at the combine to say, okay, Bryce Young, he put on the weight. He's a lot taller than I thought. This is the guy for number one, the supreme QB number one in this draft class.
If he's less than 5'11", I would be concerned. If he's 5'11", I think
he's like 5'10", 3/8. Are we okay? 5'10", 4/8, maybe.
I mean, that's starting to get a little worrisome to me. I will say the thing with Young about his height specifically is that his game doesn't show all the limitations that you worry about with a short quarterback generally. Like, when you see a short quarterback, most of the time you see, okay, he only throws outside the numbers. He's got to get outside the pocket to see the field, all that stuff. But Bryce Young really does a good job of being able to see in the lanes.
He plays at Alabama, so it's like he's not playing at like North Dakota State or something. Like he's playing with like NFL
size players. Yeah. So I don't have like height concerns so much as I have just durability and like, is he going to be able to take a huge hit from Myles Garrett, who's going to outweigh him by, 100 pounds, and be able to get up consistently over a 17-game schedule? And I mean, he's had injuries during his time at Alabama, so I think that's a question mark there for me. That durability and size. That's the only thing keeping me from being like,
how many pounds and you feel comfortable? How many pounds?
Man, I don't even know if it's a pounds thing because I feel like, he could weigh 205 pounds at the combine, which is, I think about the minimum size I'd be like really, in on a quarterback weighing long term. I think he will add weight as he goes probably at the NFL level, but he is a very slender framed guy. Like he does kind of have that like, not quite like to the extreme of Devontae Smith, but Devontae Smith, even if Devontae Smith worked out all the time and took all the like creatine and steroids and whatever in the world to try to bulk up, there's only so bulky Devontae Smith can get because his shoulders are like this wide and his waist is like this. So like, I think
we need to get a tailor out there to measure Bryce Young.
I need to know waist, shoulder breadth, like, what are we working with? Like, what kind of frame are we working with here? Because I just think he's a kind of a narrow framed guy, and I just don't think he's ever going to be like, he's never going to look like Russell Wilson. He's never going to look like, I mean, even Kyler Murray has a little bit of thickness to him, even though he's a
but I mean,
guy.
when you're only like 5'4", I mean, your weight is compacted.
True. But I think
this Arizona team is going to be a disaster. You thought last year was bad. This year's going to be worse.
It's oh my God. That's going to be an absolute shit show.
Yeah. Whatever that
explosive.
was.
I fucking died laughing at that.
And Shane Steichen wasn't any better in his opening press conference either. Like these guys Monty fucking dorks.
Monty Ossenfort should fire the whole fucking social media team for the Cardinals for not sitting on that fucking video and being like, no, absolutely not. This is not seeing the light of day. Like, fuck no. Like, how do you put that out there?
Oh my god.
So I was having like so much secondhand cringe watching that entire thing. Oh my god. If you haven't seen the Jonathan Gannon was it a player's coach is what they said in the tweet on the Cardinals account, but that video, holy shit, that was uncomfortable.
Oh man. Okay. This morning we said that we only had like one topic, and I said, "Oh, we'll
We're gonna
probably
do
if it's just a shorter episode, it'll be a
little
shorter
shorty
episode."
show.
We went hour and 20,
Yeah,
in typical F words fashion. So that will do it for us. Mike, what are you writing at paulkarski.com this week?
the end of the world is nigh, and we should just embrace it.
Do I need to give you the fishbowl of despair from Fantasy League a couple years back?
I may need to borrow the fishbowl of despair. No, I'm writing about edge rushers in the free agency class and what the Titans can do if they do decide to cut Bud Dupree, which they probably
they
should. I
decide
don't
to
think
cut
it's
Bud Dupree.
1,000% slam dunk.
I am starting tomorrow, or I guess today, if you're listening to this on the podcast and on a normal Wednesday, stackinginbox.com, $4 a month. Free Agency 101, Free Agency 201, and Free Agency 301 Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. It's going to be great. A lot of good information. Free Agency 101 is already 2,000 words over, or 2,000 words plus. It'll be like that probably for each one, but we'll be breaking down contracts. I'll be explaining definitions, pointing to certain things, and how they all relate to the Tennessee Titans. And then, of course, next week is the Combine, so stay tuned. We'll be doing some Combine. I won't be at the Combine. I never got approved, nor did I get turned down for a press credential, but I don't think I'm going to make the trip up to Indianapolis on the off chance that I did get approved and they just forgot to send me an email. But I'll just dedicate my days to watching it on TV and really probably come away with the same information that everybody else is coming on. And we'll get this whole thing. We're going to, don't expect a franchise tag from the Tennessee Titans.
No.
Don't even worry about it. The next big decision is all about the quarterback and Ryan Tannehill. So that if something breaks between now and when you hear our voices next, we'll probably do an emergency episode. Until then, go to Jasper's 2-for-1 on Sundays. Watch the Titans version of the hockey team, the Nashville Predators, who are in the
bring your fishbowl of despair.
Yeah, bring the fishbowl of despair. Maybe you could drink out of a Das Boot of despair or something over at Jasper's. But drink all the beer. 2-for-1 on Sundays. Next Evolution Sports Bar. For Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL on Twitter. I'm Zach Lyons at FWordsPod, and this has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.